Reggae Interviews. Word sound power.
This is DJ 745 for Reggae Interviews, and we just want to get up close and personal and get to learn a little bit more about who Naomi Cowan is. As you realise, traffic is not easy in Kingston, and that is why I'm late for this interview. We have a big remix of that song featuring the original dancehall DJ, Chakademus.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that, and really honoured also to be able to collaborate with someone of his calibre from our culture and within our music, because in 10, 15, 20 years, like, we can look back and there's this track, it exists and it's part of like our musical history. So he wrote his verse immediately as soon as we approached him, and he also loves the concept and has been super encouraging to me in the process. Yeah.
I mean, I really like the fact that, we're sort of like bridging that gap between some of the younger generations and the elders. I mean, Chakademus has been making music since around about 1985. So I think it's a great look that you're sort of doing a collab with an elder.
Yeah, and I mean, he's not an elder. Well, I guess you could call him an elder. But yeah, for sure, even the song itself was produced by Clevie, Brownie, and I co-wrote it with my dad. So it does feel like a multi-generational project or production, and I think there's a lot of value to those that have been laying the foundation before us, and there's things that you can learn from them and you can pick up and apply moving forward. So yeah.
I mean, I think that a lot of people listening to that song will take the song at face value, but there's so much more of a deeper meaning to that song.
Yeah, so Kingston Traffic is really more of a social commentary song in that during the pandemic, I noticed as well, and I could feel a lot of busyness coming from the world, because everyone is trying to figure out, what do I do, how do I stay relevant, how do I get my message out there in the midst of literally feeling like we're losing our way of life. And especially in our industry, in entertainment, it was just everybody going live, everybody, it was just so much, so it felt really busy. And then what's so funny is that in my family, we talk about the traffic all the time. It's like one of our main things that we talk about. So every time we drive in somewhere, we say, boy, avoid this road, avoid that road, you don't see the traffic is bad, boom, boom, boom. So I think it just kind of became a natural thing that my dad and I had this idea, like, we need to talk about the traffic and also recognize that there's a traffic mentality sometimes in our society, where we're always we call it crab in a barrel in Jamaica, which just means everybody's trying to scrape their way up, and sometimes we end up hurting one another in the process of doing that, because we're just trying to survive, so that's a bit about the concept of Kingston Traffic.
I mean, I think I can definitely sort of relate to some of the things that you just said, like, for example, during the pandemic, I think we were kind of lived out because, it wasn't the natural way that we're used to sort of, absorbing reggae music, and, we give thanks for all the virtual lives and things, but I think it then reached a point where we just thought, we want to get back to seeing artists live on stage again.
I mean, I think as an artist, that was the hardest part, because I genuinely love to perform. It's one of my favorite aspects of living the life of a musician and a performer. So as much as, audiences were looking forward to seeing us live, we were just wanting to, because even though we had all of these virtual shows and stuff like that, it was a little bit different. There's no audience, there's the energy of being in a space of music. You can't replicate that as much as you'd like to. You have to be there to experience it. So yeah, for sure, I'm glad that we're back.
The song Kingston Traffic, I mean, it was originally released in the summer of 2022.
Yes.
And how is that being received by people across the world, your fans? What is the feedback that you're getting on that single?
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, the feedback has been incredible. I would say is I think this is definitely one of my first more what you call like a conscious song, and so many people have reached out and said, boy, I'm really proud of you for putting yourself out there in that way. I think sometimes like, even for me, I want whatever message I'm sending to be very specific and very strong and very clear. So I mean, the feedback has been great. My colleagues have also just been super encouraging about it as well, and I believe that even the Jamaican music space, the radio, they're appreciating it too. So
that's a good look then, for real.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into it, I want to try and understand, who is Naomi Cowan, both as a person, as an individual, and also as an artist?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I think with all things, I mean, who I am as an artist is grounded in who I am as a person, right? And my artistry feeds into who I am too. You know, so I separate the two in a way, but they're not separated at the same time. So what I mean by that is, it's really hard to answer that question also about who you are as a person, but I'll try my best. I would say that at the very root of who I am, I try to anchor love in everything that I do. And the way I was raised was to be a light, to be a vessel of love and encouragement and positive energy, right? So that is a big part of who I consider myself to be, or even just who I always, like, that's the type of thing that I focus a lot of my time on, is how can I better myself to be of better service to those around me, in the small ways and in the big ways. But of course it translates into my music.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And then I would say as an artist too, you know, one of the things that music has really done for me is actually inspired me to be more authentic and to be more of myself. So I think we go through life with a lot of expectations and roles and things that society puts on you, and when you start to make anything that represents you, like I think it can go across the board in all industries, but I would say especially in the arts, when you have to make something and you need to put your name on it, it forces you to be very real. You know, so I would say that as an artist, my main goal is authenticity. You know, whether it's authentic in what I'm wearing, what I'm singing, what I'm saying, what I'm, you know, those the authenticity is at the core of what I want to represent musically. Yeah, because I think if I can't be myself, then how would you feel inspired to be yourself? True. And then on top of that, if I'm not true to myself, I'm not doing myself any justice. Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, when I listen to your music, I kind of feel like an inner consciousness of Naomi Cowan coming out. You know, you talk about relationships,
yes,
life, love, and also social commentary. And I think that what we hear on record is actually a little bit of an insight into who you are as a person.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like almost everything I have released, I've either written it myself or co-written. And when I step into a studio and into a space, I pour my heart out. You know, so you might hear the songs and it's like, oh, this is a love song, this is nice. But almost, I would say every single song that you would hear from me is inspired by actual events, whether it's happening in my life or things that have happened around me where I felt attached to the experience. And that's what I love about writing too, is that I have been able to find ways to craft stories through my own experiences that I hope that others can relate to. You know, so if you listen to my music, you actually can get to know me very, very easily, but you just have to listen. Yeah. And don't just take it for what it is at the surface level. But if you actually take the time and you sit down and you splice through, yeah man, you will find me for sure.
I mean, I kind of feel as though, you know, you're in a creative space musically at the moment where boundaries are being broken. You know, those definitions that were sort of there in the 90s of, you know, this is dancehall, this is reggae, they're kind of being broken. So, you know, how do you feel about that yourself?
Honestly, I think one of my goals, just so you know, is so that reggae music is not only recognized globally as, okay, one of the base genres that forms culture, but I want to see more reggae and dancehall music on the charts. I want to see our music even more mainstream. You know, that's my goal and my intention for our culture, because the minute one of us breaks through a certain barrier, it opens up the door and opens the way for everybody else. You know what I'm saying? So if you look at, like, for example, when Sean Paul had, you know, broken certain barriers, what happened after that? Beanie Man, Bounty Killer, Elephant Man, all of these producers also had a lot of success from Jamaica, forming a legacy. You know what I'm saying? And then our culture literally became pop culture at one point in time. And so I said that to say, with what you asked me about, you know, people breaking barriers, that is just a necessary part of evolution. Evolution means there's some kind of change and shape-shifting taking place, because remember, if you listen to other genres like R&B, so you and I could sit down and identify R&B from the 50s, 60s, 70s. You can literally hear the difference in the sound, but there's also certain elements that have not changed. And so I think that the fact that so many of the artists right now are making an effort to shapeshift and to, you know, push past certain boundaries, it's only going to be for our benefit and Jamaica's benefit. Like, everybody will win the more we're willing to change, because I mean, historically, all other aspects of society, there's no way we could be where we are today if certain laws weren't passed, if slavery wasn't abolished, if we didn't get independence as a nation. You know what I'm saying? If you look at everywhere else in life, technology, I mean, we can go on and on and on. If we don't change, we'll stay the same. So the same applies to our music and our, you know, if we don't make certain changes, we'll kind of just be stuck in the same thing. And I think we all want to see the best happen, you know? So, yeah.
Now, you spent some time in Canada where you were working before you decided to take music as a professional career. What were you feeling and hearing when you returned back to Jamaica?
Yeah, how was I feeling?
What were you hearing and feeling music-wise?
Yeah, well, the reason why I made the decision to come back home was because I knew that I wouldn't be able, let me not say this, but hold on, I'll start over. I made the decision to come back home because I knew that being on Jamaican soil was paramount to my ability to grow as an artist, as a Jamaican artist, because I had made the decision that I wanted to make sure that reggae was at the foundation of what I was doing, and so I knew I had to come home because there's certain things, once again, you cannot duplicate it. When you go to a stage show or you go to a street dance and you go to anything like that, there's just an element that is so true and unique to Jamaica that no matter how much you try to replicate it anywhere else, you can't. No. And so first of all, I knew I had to come home. I had to watch, listen, learn, absorb, you know, feel certain things myself. And then on top of that, in terms of how it felt, I mean, it was very terrifying. You know, it was scary in its own way because Jamaica is not an easy place. And it's not an easy place no matter who you are, where you come from. And then worse, as an artist, you know, standing out and making a stand for myself and wanting my voice to be heard separate from my parents is also a whole different mission for me, you know. And so it's been a lot of work, and I've done my best to show the world who I am as Naomi Cowan, and I feel like it's working. So yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, musically, I think, you know, some of the first songs that we heard from you were, of course, Paradise Plum, and there was a mixtape that came with that as well, and then of course the Stargirl EP, which was produced by Walshy Fire. That's a big collab to do. How did that come around?
Wow, well, you know what, that was one of the things that was birthed out of the pandemic. So what happened is, when all the borders closed all over the world, Walshy and I met up with another producer. Her name is Wiz, and Wiz is also the daughter of Barris Hammond. Wizard. Yeah, Wizard. So, long story short, we met in December of 2019. Made a quick song just as a vibe, and then when the borders closed, he reached out. He was like, "Hey, do you want to meet up?" So we actually went up to Uncle Barris's house. We sat down, started talking about music, and he just said, "I think we should just work together and we should just see what happens, because we're all stuck here. We have to create." Yeah, and then on top of that, while she was really, really encouraging to me, he was just very much saying, "Listen, I see so much for you. I see that you have the potential to really be one of the biggest voices out of this country." And he said, "You're not a traditional artist." He said, "You have the potential to be huge." And so he encouraged me to just make what I felt like making, you know, just use all of the influences that I have, you know, between reggae, between dancehall, pop, R&B. He just said, you know, you can sing, you can DJ, you can do all these things. He said, you're way much more than what people think you are.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So that's the birth of songs like Royalty, Holiday, Lucky Me, which I think featured Ronkus, and that was produced by Wizard.
Yes. So it was the birth of all of those things. And funniest thing is, I actually had quite a bit of music in the pipeline at the time, and so we listened through what I had already demoed, and then we made new things, and Stargirl was born.
Yeah. And I really love the cover on Stargirl as well, which shows a young Naomi Cowan.
Yeah. So the concept of Stargirl is almost like a, you know, like a little superhero in her own right, and it's also to represent the birth of me as an artist, you know, because I think that the picture that I chose, I must have been like 9 years old, but at that time there was just so much that was birthing in me. When I was in school, I was a very active and I was a little star girl, you know what I mean? Meaning at my school, I was on the track team, I was on the netball team, I was a deputy head girl, I performed, I danced, I was singing, I was doing I just did everything. And I was exploring everything, and I was doing really great in school, and all of the, just this look of just fire. And so I chose that picture because it just represented like a certain time, and then because the idea of Star Girl is that she grows up and she's going to become another star and this and that. And so that's kind of the journey Walshy and I are on creatively, is to develop and build that story. And so, yeah, I'm glad you like it. And thanks for, and that's, sorry, go ahead.
I think that in itself, what you've just said about, the things that you did in terms of extracurricular, it's going to be so inspirational to people that are watching today, because, I think as a child nowadays, there are so many pressures. You've got the educational aspects, but then at the same time, you've got your peers around you, you've got social media, and there's so many influences. So, in that little mind of an 8, 9, 10-year-old child, you sometimes get pulled from all different directions. Where do I go? What do I focus my energy on?
Yeah, I mean, I went to a school called Heidel out here, which is like closer to St. Catherine, and it was a very diverse school, meaning, they're really great on sports, but thankfully they had, just different elements and angles and avenues for me to go into. But I do think that for children and just, for young minds, it's important that you just try everything and see what feels good, what feels the best. Yeah,
no, that's good. With the Stargirl EP, we also had a mixtape. Now, I absolutely love that mixtape.
Listen to it.
Do you know what? From the opening sort of beats of a song called "Back to Life" from Soul to Soul, which that really surprised me, because that is such a big anthem across the world, but in particular, it's the UK, it's the London song. Why did you choose that?
So same thing. So with the creation of the mixtape, I just when Walshy and I were coming up with the idea, I playlisted as much things that I just have an appreciation for. And I really have an appreciation for music of the late 80s into early 90s, and that's just one of my favorite songs.
Oh wow.
Literally. So I just wanted to do an a cappella of it. It wasn't just a no-brainer. So we knew that we wanted this mixtape to feel slightly kind of retro, kind of hip-hop influenced, because even my fashion and all of that stuff there's a part of me that pulls on that era a lot when I get dressed and things like that. So I'm glad you liked the mixtape, and thank you for listening to it, because we wanted it to reveal all of the elements of who I am, all of the different things that make up Naomi Cowan, vocally, musically, creatively. If you hear, there's some freestyles in there, and like a lot of comedic elements to it too, because I guess people find me funny, I think. And so through my first couple of releases, you may not see that side of who I am yet, and that's what we wanted the mixtape to.
I mean, I think within the first 2 or 3 minutes, because then you sort of were freestyling on rhythms like the Death in the Arena, the Answer rhythm. I think Auntie Marcia has a little cameo in there, and Sarah Couch. So that is a great mixtape.
Thank you, and it was a work of love and labor of love, and thankfully I didn't work on it alone. A process where even like Runkus helped me out with the post-production, tessellated, so I would be in the studio voicing these dub plates and stuff and sending it to them, and they would mix it for me, and it was a time that I'll never forget, because my friends were part of it.
And I think what was great was that you actually riding over some of those foundation rhythms was really sort of showcasing a different person, a different side of Naomi Cowan as an artist. Yes,
same thing, and that was the purpose of it, and that's one of the things. While she was like, boy, people need to know, say you can DJ, and people even know, say, yo, you're bad, boom, 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 boom. So I just had the most fun. My goal for that project was to enjoy the process, was to show as many sides of who I am, which is why it's called a mixtape, and I believe we accomplished that.
I think you most certainly did.
Thank you.
You most certainly did. Now, we are here at Mr. Green's at the Dubwise Cafe here on Lady Musgrave Road. This is one of the most popular spots in Kingston for live reggae music, and it was some point last year where you actually were here for the launch party for the Gratitude Rhythm by Winter James. Let's talk about that project. Yeah, sure.
Working with Winter was an absolute pleasure. He's phenomenal musically. As a producer, I really felt supported by him, meaning we're in a different time when it comes to musical production, so it's not oftentimes that a producer is actually directing you as an artist and as a singer. And he even challenged me to sing in a lower register than I usually do. That, you know, when the first time when I heard the rhythm, I was like, boy, I'm gonna have to sing super high. And I said, and then, you know, he said, no man, just use a warm part of your voice. So there was a lot of things that happened in the writing of that song. I think my song kind of took the longest to write. I don't know why, but we kept going back into the studio and revoicing. But I love this song, and I shared with him some personal, you know, aspects of my story. And he said, let's make it about you finding your voice. And that's what it's about. Yeah. So I'm really grateful to have been part of the gratitude rhythm. Yeah.
I mean, I think that, you know, we're living in a time now where, you know, rhythm jugglings do not seem to be, you know, sort of high up there in terms of like taking precedent.
Yeah.
It's all about sort of like individual projects and things.
Yes.
So, you know, we give thanks to people like Winter that still give some of us radio selectors like myself one or two little jugglings that we can kind of like, you know, pre on the radio and things.
Yeah, and I think also it's important for high quality jugglings too, and that's why I wanted to be on that particular rhythm, because I knew from a qualitative standpoint it was going to be at a certain level. Just like when we did rock and groove, like for me, when it comes to jugglings, I love doing jugglings, but I want to be sure that what we're putting into it from the producer standpoint, from the artist standpoint, is intentional. That is, you know, like that it's representing the music at a certain level, instead of just, oh, we have a juggling.
Yeah.
You see me? Because then it doesn't have as much impact. Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing that I sort of also notice or realize is that with a lot of younger artists, you don't necessarily sort of feature on so many projects, whereas, you know, back in the 80s, the 90s, the noughties, that's all that happened. So, you know, if there was an artist that was kind of firing, let's say Anthony B as an example, he would be on every single juggling, and in a way I feel that the music had a dilution.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that. So I guess during that time too, the reason why jugglings worked is because the radio and everyone was looking to the producers to give them the music, and it was like there had to be a faster turnover or more, you know, whereas now we're so saturated, everybody's making music, everybody's a producer. It's a little bit different now. So I don't think it diluted it then. But I do think now you can dilute your thing a little bit if you go on too many jugglings, because there's so much music being made. Not all of it is of a certain quality. And so you just have to know what you want to do with your thing. You know what I mean? Like, you have to know what direction you want to take. I do appreciate juggling culture also, because I think there was like a bit of like an appreciation for writing too, because you'd have one rhythm and everybody writing something different, and sometimes the producers would adjust the production to the writing, which I loved. So then, you know, if I hear an Elephant Man song on a juggling, it's gonna sound different from Baby Sham or whatever the case is, and even that, there's just something special about that. Yeah.
Okay, we've spoken quite a lot about you as a person. We've not spoken about your parents. Your parents are Carlene Davis and Tommy Cowan. Carlene Davis obviously is still making great music to this day. I think that her most recent releases were Just Shall Wipe Away the Tears and Highway to Heaven. And of course, your father has had so many sort of roles. So, you know, he's been a musician in the Jamaicans. He's worked with Bob Marley. He's been a producer. 1967 was the festival competition winner with Baba Boom. He was only pipped by Toots and the Maytals the year before, when the festival competition first started. Both of your parents are deeply rooted in music, we know that. To an outsider, it would be seen as a given that Naomi Cowan is going to enter music from a young age, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, you know what? I've always wanted to be my own person. I've always wanted to be seen as an individual. You know, same thing, just like with Stargirl, from a very young age, I just knew I was very special. And I think I didn't want to just do what people expected, to be honest.
Right, okay.
And I used to get very annoyed when I was a little girl that, like, let's say if I walked into a place or I go to the hair salon or anything, it's like, oh, you're Carlene Davis, sing, you must can sing. And so it kind of pissed me off. I'm going to be honest. I was just like, you leave me alone. I'm gonna forge my own path. I'm gonna be my own. I'm gonna be me, and whatever the case is. And so in a way, I pushed music away, not because I didn't love it, but because I just wanted to not follow anybody's expectations.
Right.
Right. So you know, I took time and I went to university and I studied broadcasting and all these things, so that I could have my own brand, if you want to call it that. But the truth is, music is one of those things, is that, first of all, when you're giving it as a gift, there's just, I mean, it's it's one of the few, music is one of the few things that, even though we make music, but even a voice, man can't make a voice. True. It's a God-given instrument. It's literally an instrument. And so I got to a point where I realized I was fighting it, you know, and it was calling me all the time, and it would pull me back in, and I was like, I can't be doing this to myself, because it was also affecting me negatively in my mind and in my spirit. And I realized I wasn't being true to myself. And so I had to face, I guess you could say, I had to face the music and just do it, because I knew that if I didn't do it, it would haunt me for the rest of my life. Yeah. And I felt like, you know, I'm put on this earth for a reason, and if there's something that I meant to accomplish through music, I would be doing myself an injustice. So it was a long battle, if you want to call it that. But then also, when I look at the trajectory that I've been on and stuff like that, I see how the timing was also perfect. And maybe it was just meant to happen in this way for me too. You know, I don't have any regrets about it. I just have to just enjoy the process. Yeah.
Was there any particular sort of, you know, life moment, event or incident where you decided, actually, pursuing my career in broadcasting is not what I want to do, it's music that's my calling?
Yeah, people always ask that. I would say it was more of a series of events. Okay. I wouldn't say one big thing happened. So a couple of the things that had happened, I had a job in Toronto working at a tech company, and, you know, long story short, my position was shifted really quickly, and my salary was cut by like $20,000 per year. And then my dad had to have surgery at one point in time, and even though it wasn't life-threatening surgery, there was just a lot of things that kept happening that were reminding me that, wait a second, like, life is not, you know, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed in this world. And especially when that thing happened at work, I thought to myself, well, we're here running around, everybody's here chasing, you know, stability, but stability doesn't even exist in a stable space, or what we think is stable. You know, you do the college thing, you go get a degree, you do all of the things, and it's still, nothing is guaranteed. So I was like, what the hell? You know, I realized that you may as well take a risk with something that really makes you happy. But it's not to say that I don't love what I did before. I just realized it wasn't all that I wanted to do, and I realized that it didn't make any sense just trying to pursue one particular thing. It was more of me loving myself enough to realize that I had the potential to do as much as I wanted to. So, you know, I can sing, I can act, I can do whatever the hell I want, once I believe in it. So there were a few incidents for sure, but it was more of me recognizing that, wait a second, nothing is guaranteed in this world. Nothing is promised. Life is really, really short. And so if you're going to be here, just be here in your best self. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think what you're sort of like referring to is you've got to have that sort of that content from within yourself about what you are actually doing, what your purpose is. And sometimes, you know, as you said, you know, we may go to college, we might get a job, and you kind of think that you're sort of like on this sort of like pathway of doing the right thing. But actually, when you take a step out of that and look within, you're not.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, first of all, everything was still part of my path. Right? So I wouldn't say, boy, I was off path. I would just say that I wasn't fully embracing all that my path had the potential to do, to be, if that makes sense. So so the truth is that, first of all, nothing is wrong with education is great. Like, I have nothing against education. So it's not a thing where I regret going to college or whatever the case is. It's just really more of owning all of who I am and owning all of the things that make up who you are. So a lot of times we go through life and we might be doing something and we're happy doing it, but there's other things that make us happy that we keep hiding or we keep diminishing because we feel like it's not important, or we feel like it doesn't make any money, or so we don't do it. But I would say it's not so much about the path thing or doing it's just about like owning and loving yourself enough to express all of who you are. So for example, there might be somebody out there right now that they work a corporate job or whatever the case is, but at the same time they really love to paint. Now, it doesn't mean that you should drop your job and become a painter. I mean, unless you really want to do that, but give space for that passion. Take the time, like set the time to say, okay, on a Saturday afternoon or whatever, I'm gonna set up my canvas and I'm actually going to still express that part of who I am, because it's a form, it's an actual act of self-love to do the things that make you happy. You know, so for me, what I recognize though when it comes to music, I could have stayed working a full-time job and then like on the weekends singing at church or whatever, or on a Wednesday night go to an open mic, but I knew that wouldn't be enough for me because of how much I love it. In other words, I love this art that we do so much that I recognize I needed to be able to do it as much as possible. Now, if I loved music in a small way where I was like, oh, I'm happy just once a week, you know, singing some covers, I would have been fine too, and that would have been also just as meaningful. But because my passion and love for it is so healing to me, I knew that I needed to do it like all the time. You know what I'm saying? So I had to have that conversation with myself to say, all right, how much do I want this? Do I want this to be my forever, or do I just want to add this to what I already do? And so there's those conversations I had with myself, and I recognized that, wait a second, I want to do this all the time. I did not feel good coming home from work. Like I would, you know, come home from work and be in bed by 9 o'clock. And I'm so tired, my body was so tired. And that was a sign to me that, wait, this thing that I'm doing isn't giving me energy. It's not serving my soul. Whereas like I can spend 4 hours, or I can spend how much time in the studio, and I look around and it's 5 a.m. and I'm still like wired. Wide awake, or after I perform, even though my body might be physically tired, my soul is so alive. After I come off the stage, that feeling I can't describe it. So that's how I also knew, wait a second, I'm supposed to do this more often than not. Especially when I perform, when I write, it's like I don't like the vibration that I feel is I don't want, it's not addictive or anything, but I literally feel like who I'm supposed to be when I make my music, when I sing my music.
I can totally relate to what you're saying, because I have 2 very diverse career pathways. One of those is music, and for me, music is such a big part of my life. It has been from ever since, that I kind of see myself thinking that actually when I'm doing things like talking to yourself, it doesn't seem like work.
Exactly, yeah, same thing. And even so, for example, what we're experiencing now, sharing stories, having conversations, that was at the root of why I wanted to be in broadcasting, because that's also something that I really love. I love learning about others and understanding what part of your journey made you who you are, right? But what I love about the musical process too, if I'm in a studio with a producer or another writer, a lot of times we get to share our experiences, and there's a storytelling aspect there, and then we're making then all of a sudden we have this beautiful song. So for me, I think storytelling is a big part of why I do what I do. And that's why, you know, and also coming from my dad, who was known as an MC, as a host, as a voice of Jamaica, that's where that gift came from as well, the gift of speaking and listening and understanding others. And even when you listen to him talk about the role he's played in so many artists' lives, I realized I inherited that gift from him of being able to see people for who they are. You know, and so, you know, the doors are not closed on all of my paths. I just know that I had to be open to all of them taking place.
Now, recently, I know that you were over in London earlier this year, and there was something you posted on IG that really kind of struck out to me. It's a quote that I'm going to give to you. The only difference between music and mathematics is that one creates a sound. Both study the creation of patterns. A room full of geniuses.
Yeah, wow, thank you for reading the caption. That's good. I actually took the time to think about what I wanted that to be. So I've always struggled with math in school, to be honest. I did not do my best at mathematics. It's funny because in England, I think they call it GCSE and CXC. I got a grade 2, which is like a B, and I don't know how, because I've always struggled with math. Ever since, everyone in my family, we've never been great at math. Numbers always trip me up. But the truth is, I've gotten to a place of appreciating my brain for how it works, in that music is you're actually doing a lot of math. It's just that it's more intuitive for me. And so I thought about the fact that in that room, you know, I had in the photos, there's Toddla T, Hector Roots, percussionist, a singer, guitar player, Jay Summer, another artist called Juan Henriquez. Just a room full of creatives were there. And we're all very atypical people, meaning we're really not normal, like we're not the average person. And at the same time, I have an appreciation for how different we are. And I don't know, I just started to Google music and math, and I've always known that music is great for children in terms of like, their development as mathematicians or whatever the case is. But I just thought about the fact that when we sit down and I catch a rhythm, or I sing a song on time, or I find a melody, because enough times I'll sing something and somebody will say to me, oh, that's a counter melody of this, and I say, oh, I don't know, I just found it. I'm actually doing math in my head, because my understanding of music is I don't have a lot of formal training. People may expect that I did, but I don't have a lot of formal vocal training. I've done piano lessons and stuff, but I'm not actually fully formally trained as a musician.
Right, okay.
Not even as a vocalist. But at the same time, when I do things, producers will look at me and say, wait a second, like, how you decided to, and I was like, I don't know, I just did it. So I've gotten to a place where I'm recognizing how dope I am, in terms of musically, as well as just artistically, how I sing, how I find things, all of that stuff. So that's what the caption is about.
Yeah. So you're obviously in London, in the studio with Toddla T, so I guess that there are some projects and works that you were both working on.
Yeah. He and I met up earlier this year, and just, I just played him a lot of the stuff I have that's unreleased, and he got a feel for my sound and for my energy, and we just had a lot of fun, and then we just started to just make music. We never really thought too hard about it. We did set a creative direction, and then we just said, let's just stay in this vein of things and see what happens. So so we have a lot more work to do as well, and you'll definitely see some Toddla T, Naomi Cowan stuff coming out soon. Yeah,
sounds very exciting, and no doubt I'm sure that you're going to be working with some of your other collaborators, people like Walshy Fire.
So it's just my team is expanding. Honestly, that's all that's happening, and I'm really, really happy and grateful to see where alignment is taking place, because for me it's super important that when I connect with people, that we connect on a deeper level, that we support each other where we are, and you feel comfortable being yourself. It's really hard to work when someone is trying to make you into something that you're not. So I think what I noticed when I work with Walshy, when I work with Toddla, when I work with Runkus, all of us, we get each other, and we want to see each other be the best version of each other. It's not so much about, no, you need to be this and you need to be that, and let's put you in this box. It's like, no. Stay where you are, and let's make it bigger. Let's make it more magical. Let's make it better. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, talking of live performances, I mean, you did a really good acoustic set earlier this year up at Skyline Levels, and I was really touched by the cover that you did of Jamali's El Shaddai. What a beautiful rendition.
Oh, I love that song. It is a staple for me in many of my sets. It's just because it's a big prayer, and I feel like one of the elements of reggae music that I love is that it's so spiritual in nature. And even Jamali's delivery of it vocally is next level. And I don't remember when I discovered it worked well with my voice, but there was one point in time where I started to sing it, and I was like, wow, this song feels like I wrote it. It feels like it was written for me. And sometimes there's songs that are out there in the atmosphere that, for example, lots of Whitney Houston's big songs, she didn't originally write them, but she just took it as her own, and it just feels like one of those songs for me. So thank you. And I am really happy that Kalissa and her sister Kadia started Skyline Levels TV, because it's been a while since we've had content like that, homegrown, produced in Jamaica at the production level, that they've poured so much of their heart into it. They mixed it, they mastered it, they put quality into it, and I think it's really going to change a lot of things coming out of Jamaica. Yeah.
Well, look, we really have to give thanks to you for sharing some time with us today, talking about, your previous projects, what's up and coming. We're definitely going to be looking forward for seeing Naomi Cowan on tour as well, because I've only managed to see you once live, and I think that was 2019 at the Bob Marley celebrations with Leela and Savannah. So we're definitely looking forward to seeing a full set from Naomi Cowan over in Europe as well.
Yes, me too.
Now, just to close with, I think from our reasoning today, it's clear that there is no such thing as a manual or a book that any person can follow. You can't go onto Amazon and get a book on how to be a reggae artist, but share some insights, share some pointers that you can give from your own personal life experience, because I feel your journey's been kind of different to, let's say, somebody else. So I just want you to just spend a few minutes just, sharing some pointers and maybe some inspiration for some of the viewers today.
Sure. I think one of my main pointers is to find people that have been where you want to go, and try your best not to do it alone. That's a hard lesson I've had to learn. I'm a very independent-minded person, and sometimes a bit stubborn, and oftentimes there's been times in the past where I've not allowed people to help me when I needed help, you know. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I want people to know, is that you're not meant to do all of it alone, and you're not meant to be alone in this world. Nobody that we know that has done anything phenomenal or notable has ever done it on their own. It may look like it, but they literally couldn't do it by themselves.
True.
So one of my biggest pieces of advice is look for help, but of course make sure it's the right help, and listen to your gut when it comes to the people that you let into your space. That's the first thing. And the second thing I would say is believe in what you bring to the table so much that you're okay with saying no. And the reason why I say that is because when you're starting out in any space, same thing, when you're starting out in any space and you're looking for assistance and you're looking for mentorship, sometimes you can be so desperate because you don't think that you're worth it. But then what happens is then anybody can come into your space and kind of control what you're doing. But what I recognize is when you believe in what your brand is, what your sound is, what your music is, you can easily pinpoint who is for you and who is not for you. But you have to take that time in your private time, believing, like just literally believing in the value of your individual offering to the world. Because then no matter who comes across, you're not working for their approval. You've already approved yourself. And you've already believed in what you're doing. So once people join your team, you're only picking those that are parallel with you. They share the same energy, they're matching your energy, and they're also doing it for the love of what you're doing. Does that make sense? You really have to believe, like, you have to get almost a little bit crazy in believing in not just in yourself, because people say that all the time, like, oh, I believe in myself. No, it's about believing in what you bring. In a way, I kind of try to separate my musical offerings as separate from me. I see it as like a product, like as a item. Yes, it's coming from me, but I try to treat it separately so that I can see it like a baby almost, you know. And it's almost, anybody that has kids, I don't have kids, but I would imagine that when you bring someone into this world, it is, you know, you see them as the most precious thing that you want to protect. You want to raise your child like with the best that you can do it. So I try to treat, I'm making an effort to treat my music and all that I do with that same level of reverence, because then same thing, I'm not distracted as easily. I'm not making decisions out of like a desperate place. I really choosing the best for what the music deserves. So even now I'm taking my time with my music. I'm taking my time to make decisions versus running and because you're trying to keep up with everybody else. No, this is my thing and nobody else can duplicate. Like, you can never make this ever again. Like, if you think about it, never again will there be another Naomi Cowan born on the day I was born, in the place at the time, with the features. Like, you know, there might be other girls that look like me, they may maybe sound like, but there's never be another me. So I think that believing in your unique offering is to me the most powerful thing that you can do. Trust me, like it is life-changing is what I would say, because over the pandemic, same thing, I had to get there because the world, there was nothing there. It felt like there was nothing there. And so the minute I tapped into understanding and believing like how great I am in my own way, I saw how things started to unfold in a different way. So yeah.
That's very special. I really like that. I think that one of the things that you said at the beginning was, you know, sort of like, you know, working with people that have carried out that same journey, standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And not being afraid to listen and recognize even that there is a bit of a formula, but then just making it your own, you know. So yeah.
Well, once again, Naomi Cowan, give thanks for your time today. One love.
Thank you, Reggae Interviews. Appreciate it.
Reggae Interviews. Word, sound, power.